Vanderbilt Chipper Vac, a breakthrough yard cleanup machine that recycles yard debris as you walk. The powerful yard vac handles leaves and twigs easily, while this auto-feeding chipper takes branches up to 3.5 inches thick. Plus, the Troy-built
coupons for our newest services. We know how valuable your free time is, which is why premium channels are today's best value.
This is CNN.
We today have concluded an agreement to end the war and bring peace with honor in Vietnam.
Welcome to Larry King Live. Tonight, did the United States knowingly leave American soldiers behind at the end of the Vietnam War? New evidence suggests that President Nixon may have known that POWs were stranded, but did nothing about it. Former Secretary of State Henry Kissinger responds to the charges. Now, here's Larry King.
Good evening. Welcome to another edition of Larry King Live. One quick note. This Friday night, Governor Mario Cuomo is the special guest. Did the United States government knowingly abandon American POWs when the United States withdrew from the Vietnam War? In testimony today before the Senate Select Committee on POW MIA affairs, our former Secretary of State angrily denied allegations that he and other Nixon officials had evidence that Americans were still being held when the pullout began. But yesterday, two former Nixon defense secretaries testified they believe President Nixon had strong evidence that American prisoners were being held when the withdrawal began. And Committee Chairman Senator John Kerry read from recently released secret documents that suggest the Nixon administration lost interest in the fate of the POWs once the peace accords were signed. Strong charges. Here to respond, the man of the hour. He testified almost all day today. Former Secretary of State Henry Kissinger. Always great to welcome him to Larry King Live. Was that grueling for you today? Was it tough?
It was a long day.
Anything surprise you today?
No, I think it was a friendly hearing by responsible people.
Were you hurt by what you heard?
Well, I am hurt by the charge because when you're in politics or in high office, there are many policy disagreements. But leaving American servicemen behind at the end of a long and bitter war, that's not a policy disagreement. That's an attack on the honor and decency of the people involved. That cannot happen. That could not have happened, and it did not happen.
You were not Secretary of State then, right? You were...
I was security advisor.
Okay. Were they mentioned when you sat down with the President, Secretary of State, and others? Did someone say, what about the POWs?
No, wait a minute. As part of the agreement, which I negotiated, 595 prisoners of war returned, that many of whom had been prisoner for 8 years. And what they think of this is shown by the fact that on many occasions they have invited me as guest of honor to their annual dining in at Randolph Air Force Base in San Antonio, Texas. So the issue is not at all, did we get the prisoners back? We got the known prisoners back. The issue is whether they were prisoners that were illegally kept behind by Hanoi, that for some reason we didn't properly account for. That is the charge that is being made.
All right, now, was that discussed?
Certainly it was discussed. First of all, one has to say this about what Secretary Schlesinger and Secretary Laird said yesterday. Secretary Laird has already denied that he said what he's alleged to have said.
It's this year. People have denied what they said.
Secretary Laird's position is the same as mine, which is that it is possible that the Vietnamese, in violation of all agreements, in violation of all human rights, illegally kept people back. That it's possible. We're not saying it happened. Secretary Schlesinger said what he said, which is that he now believes some were held back. Secretary Schlesinger was my colleague for many years. I have high regard for him. The fact remains he was C.I.A. director at the time, Secretary of Defense shortly afterwards. I am convinced one will not be able to find one document, one conversation, one telephone call, one meeting, when he expressed the opinion then that he's alleged to have expressed yesterday.
Do you think
so what he thinks now after 20 years, it's possible. But that isn't the point. The point is we who were responsible for extricating ourselves from Vietnam and who did bring the prisoners back, did we leave anyone behind? And the answer to that is we left nobody behind.
Did Henry Kissinger think, maybe they're holding some people?
Yeah, I tell you, the following things happened. They never gave us a list of prisoners while the war was going on, playing on the heartstrings of the American families. So we didn't even have a list, except for bits and pieces that they gave out to peace activists that came to Hanoi. So we had some fragments of people that we knew were on lists, but we did not have a complete list. As part of the peace agreement that I negotiated, they were obliged to turn over lists of prisoners on the day the agreement was signed. That is the first time that we could check what they gave us against what we knew. We found about 80 names where we had believed to have some evidence that they were prisoners. And the peace agreement was signed on January 27th. I went to Hanoi on February 11th to bring them that list of prisoners and to discuss it with them. We insistently demanded an accounting 30 times in the year 1973 altogether.
And what do they say?
The problem we had in 1973 was that due to our domestic divisions, the Congress prohibited military action and cut off economic aid. So all we had, we were in the appalling position that all we had to back up our tough words were more tough words.
And no club
that we had no bargaining position left. That was our problem.
Did you go back and say this to Congress?
Absolutely.
And Congress said,
well,
or the leadership?
Of course, it was a different Congress.
Actually, but the leadership of Congress. Did you go back and say, listen?
In 73?
Yeah.
First of all, when we said that we had an inadequate accounting for missing in action, I could find quickly only about 30 public statements we had made to that effect in a 9-month period altogether. We told the Congress that if they cut off our capacity to use military force, that we would lose the ability to enforce the agreement. And they did it anyway. On May 31st, 1973, I have these dates in mind, not because I remember them, but because I had to testify today. Senator Dole put before the Congress an amendment to their cutting off of military action to the effect that if that this amendment would go only into effect if the Vietnamese gave us an honest account of the missing in action.
And that was?
And that was defeated by a vote of 55 to 25, including 12 current members of the U.S. Senate.
Now, did the other side think, or did you say to yourself, why are they holding these people? If they're going to hold them...
I'm not sure that... No, I have to tell you, the difference between me and some of these people is I'm not sure they are holding people. I think it is quite possible... First of all, I don't know why they would be holding people that they don't acknowledge.
Going to ask for ransom or something, right?
Well, if they had come a year after the peace agreement and said, by chance we just found 50 more, and it will cost you $2 billion to get them back, I would have been outraged. But that I could have understood. But here they have been, here it is 20 years after the war, they have never acknowledged that they had any prisoners. And I have difficulty understanding why they would do it. Now, on some of these discrepancies that I mentioned to you before, it is possible that they were killed under circumstances that they did not want to admit and did not want to have any questions asked. And
you mean like brutally killed?
Brutally killed, yes. I mean, being in a Vietnamese prison was no joke. I mean, people were tortured. They were in solitary confinement for long stretches.
A lady today on CNN said that of all the people in the administration, you were the most honest with her. You didn't raise their hopes dealing with these families.
Oh, glad it.
On this, in fact, she was asked on, I think on, you were always honest. Mrs. Stockdale is her name.
Sybil Stockdale.
Yeah.
Oh, yes.
She said that you were direct. You told them the odds were 1 in 10 that they would come back. Was that hard to do?
Look, I met with these families. I met with them regularly. And it was heartbreaking because they didn't know even whether their husbands were prisoners. All they knew they were missing, because there were no lists being given. I could not even tell them that I was negotiating, because until January 1972, for 3 years, my negotiations were secret. And I had to meet with them, and I take my hat off to these ladies, because many of the peace activists were trying to get them to attack the administration and to say that it was a senseless war and their husbands were suffering in vain, or their sons. Never did they do it. And I had to meet with them and say, we're doing the best we can. I can't tell you what it is when I can tell you something, but I will not. I'm really pleased that Sybil Stockdale did this.
More to come with Dr. Henry Kissinger. Then later, we'll meet Winston Lord and Vernon Walters. They were both involved in the administration, both former ambassadors. Discuss this same topic. Take your calls later. Don't go away.
Larry King Live is brought to you by MasterCard. Look for Master values at fine stores everywhere. Only from MasterCard.
Weekend. No tie, no briefcase, just plastic.
It all boils down to this. No other card you can carry is accepted in more places and in more ways.
Food.
At home and abroad.
I got it.
Than MasterCard. It's the only card you need.
Rooms.
MasterCard.
Not a bad day's work.
Master the moment. Now, Billy, can you stand up?
I'll try.
That's good, that's good. Now, can you walk to that table over there?
I don't know.
Walk to the table. That's good.
Okay.
Yeah, that's good. That's real good.
Yeah.
You know, your mama's going to be real happy to see you walking.
All right.
My name is Gianna Jessam, and I almost wasn't born. I was aborted. You see, my mother chose to abort me when she was 7 months pregnant. But by some miracle, I survived. I weighed less than 3 pounds and was raised in an incubator, and I've had many difficult operations. Now, I know there's a lot of talk about choice these days, but for me, the most beautiful choice is life.
Doctor.
Is it right for me?
Habitrol. It's a patch.
You know the patch. Habitrol. You know, Habitrol.
It's a patch. Habitrol.
Habitrol.
Habitrol Nicotine Transdermal System. Available by prescription only.
Thank you, Doctor.
Boo, there will be more monsters than you can shake an enchanted sword at when Monster Vision brings you an entire night of Ray Harryhausen flicks. Saturday, beginning at 8 on TNT.
Our guest is Dr. Henry Kissinger. He testified all day today before that select committee, POWs, MIAs. We asked earlier if it were grueling. Did they treat you well?
They treated me fine.
No complaints about any of the senators?
No.
You had a little exchange with Senator Bob Kerry, didn't you, or John Kerry?
No, John Kerry. I had a good exchange with Bob Kerry, a philosophical exchange of where America was going.
Right.
John Kerry, well, yes, but, you know, John Kerry and I come from opposite poles. He was a leader of the peace protest movement. And I frankly feel that the people who were opposed to what we were doing and the people who took away our leverage should not now criticize us for not having enough leverage.
How do you react to, in all these years now, it's almost 20, these things keep coming up? Charges, countercharges, they're there, I spotted them, here are pictures, hopes get up, hopes go down, I spot this one's alive, this one never reported, the North Vietnamese were cheats. Ross Perot, in stirring testimony, I thought a couple weeks ago, was told about being called in by the administration, told to do this, he flew there, they weren't there, they were there. What do you make of all this?
Well, I have never seen a confirmed report of a live prisoner in all those 20 years. The pictures that were in the newspapers have been demonstrated to be fakes. And my difficulty has been all along that I could not visualize why the Vietnamese would hold prisoners that they don't acknowledge. What would they get out of it? A few in order to punish them for something conceivably. So that's my intellectual difficulty. Now, in Laos, which is a more difficult territory, less well organized, was it possible that some local chieftains kept some people that dropped from the sky? Conceivable. I have never seen any evidence of it. And when I say conceivable, I don't want families to think that it's true. I'm just trying to be fair.
In your gut, you think there are none there, right?
Now, certainly not.
And if they were, they're probably gone now.
And I don't know that there were any there.
Now, all wars have this, don't they? People, the Second World War still has people who never came back.
All wars have it, but this is, of course, especially painful because they were supposed to give us an account of the missing, and they have played with us. And it is offensive that every few years they send over a few bones of deceased. They must have a mortuary somewhere where they pull them out every once in a while, and that I find offensive.
How sincere about them was Richard Nixon?
About whom?
These people, and Gerald Ford and the rest.
Look,
because a lot of people question that, and you were right there every day.
I worked for over 4 years with Richard Nixon. I had been a political opponent of his within the Republican Party.
You were a Rockefeller man.
I was a close friend of Nelson Rockefeller, and in 3 election campaigns, I fought against Richard Nixon. In matters of foreign policy, he did not play domestic politics. He was concerned with the national interest. He did not always have the grace of how to reach out, but he was sincere in what he was doing, and you have to give him enormous credit. In 1972, 6 months before an election, 2 weeks before a summit, he mined the harbors of Vietnam and expanded military operations when the North Vietnamese launched a surprise offensive against us. It could have lost him the election, and he didn't ask any questions about it.
What do you make of this being, this draft situation? Vietnam will never go away from us, I guess. Now being a campaign issue.
Well, first of all, I think one reason Vietnam won't go away from us is because, funnily enough, the opponents, first of all, I don't know what it means to be an opponent of the war. I say this is relevant also to Mr. Clinton. What does it mean you're an opponent of the war? Nobody wants war. Wants the war.
Well, you think the war shouldn't be fought, that we shouldn't be there.
Sure, but once you're there, what is your obligation? The problem that the Nixon administration had was we inherited a war from a previous administration. Do you turn it off like a television channel, or do you try to get out honorably? Now, if people disagree with the terms we had, then they should argue, but just to say you were against the war.
But if it's wrong, didn't de Gaulle pull out of Algiers after they'd been there a while? Didn't he just say
you know how long
wrong?
it took de Gaulle to pull out of Algiers? 5 years. It took us 4 years to get out of Vietnam. And we reduced our troops unilaterally.
Do you think it should be an issue in this campaign now?
There are 2 issues, it seems to me, with Mr. Clinton. One, what did or did not happen on the draft issue. I have no opinion on this. Secondly, I am somewhat bothered by this proposition that a potential president of the United States says he can determine whether he wants to go to war or not for his country. That is not a good precedent to set, but I also would say that he can set this straight by explaining what his current position on the issue is.
Are you bothered if Dan Quayle joined the National Guard in order to have a less of a chance of going?
Well, but this is the same. I don't really want to get into this debate because that's part of the political campaign. I support President Bush strongly, but I don't want to support him on this issue. I don't want to get into this particular issue.
Fair enough. We'll be back with our some more moments with Dr. Henry Kissinger and the POW MIA situation, and then we'll meet Winston Lord and Vernon Walters. Don't go away.
From Hollywood Pictures and Miramax Films.
I want them to know where they come from.
She gave them back their pride.
I like that.
She nurtured their courage.
I will fight too.
And she inspired them to believe in a better tomorrow.
The day is coming when we will all be free.
Whoopi Goldberg, Laletti Kamalo, Serafina.
Freedom is just the beginning.
Rated PG-13. Now playing in select cities. Starts Friday.
Welcome to Hotel Views, business clubs, Holiday Inn or Ramada. Bob?
Susan, you boardroom bow wow. Holiday Inn has a business club. It's got bonus points, your gifts, everything. Wake up, Susan. Smell a coffee.
I smell something, Bob, and it's not French roast. Look, Ramada's business card program has all that and more. At Ramada, you can earn bonus points faster toward over 10,000 gifts. Plus, your spouse stays free. Tell us, Bob, when did your brain check out? Face it, Ramada's in. Holidays out.
Nobody in America sells more office supplies for less than Office Depot. Nobody.
Yeah, how far away do you think I can get? In 72 hours.
I wouldn't trust my car past the city limits.
For the way you travel today more than ever, the Smart Money is on budget. Reward yourself with free rentals and upgrades. Ask about the new Budget Awards Plus frequent renter program. The Smart Money is on budget.
We're back. We have a couple of minutes left with Dr. Henry Kissinger. We'll touch some bases on this issue, which won't go away. Will it ever go away? Are we ever going to resolve this?
We really should. We should end the debate. Well, I think that the critics of the war ought finally to accept that there were honorable people on all sides of this debate and not keep conducting their vendetta forever, which is what they're doing. I mean, endless attacks on the motives of the people who, after all, felt that you could not, that 4 American presidents had said, of both parties, that the freedom of Vietnam was essential for the security of the United States. And President Nixon liquidated the war under honorable conditions.
And we know that some in government, McNamara for one, drove home one night and thought he was wrong. Did it ever happen to you? Did you ever, on a drive home one night in Washington from a meeting or from a negotiation, say?
McNamara is a fine human being. We achieved what we set out to do, which was to end the war and to bring the prisoners home.
So you never, during that period of time, questioned our morality?
It was, if you look at the suffering that happened in Vietnam, at the million that were killed in Cambodia, at the boat people, at the government that was established there, I believe we were on the moral side.
Any comment on this new book about you?
No.
You're writing your own, though, I'm told.
Yes, but I write, my book is about how various nations, including the United States, have approached foreign policy. It's not a personal memoir.
It's about negotiations.
It's about negotiations. It's about how in this new situation, America should look at foreign policy in the view of its history and in the view of how other nations look at foreign policy.
How tough, from a negotiation standpoint, were North Vietnamese?
They were the toughest negotiators I ever dealt with. They're monomaniacs.
Monomaniacs?
Monomaniacs. They're heroic people, but heroes are pains in the neck to live with. And they survived for 2,000 years. They were the only country under Chinese tutelage that never accepted the Chinese language, Chinese writing. But the price for it, that they pay for it, is to think that the whole world revolves around Vietnam. And if we had to tackle the most difficult people in the world, we'd tackle them. They were tough, treacherous, deceitful, but you had to respect them.
How far are we away from openly back with them, from exchanging ambassadors? And
Well, I tell you, I personally stay out of that debate. They bruised me too deeply, and they bruised my country too deeply, in my observation.
And there should be some new people making this.
I think that decision ought to be made by somebody else, but I still think they owe us an accounting for the missing in action. And all they have to do is let American teams travel around their country and let them see where we think airplanes crash. And
that's so logical.
And
what do they
not
say
asking
to that?
for much. Well, they don't feel they need to be logical in order to turn you down on something. They just say no.
So, and you have no appeal to logic? I'm not a negotiator, so...
Well, you have the appeal to logic you have with them. It's to balance the penalties and rewards. And if you can make a case for that, then they'll do it. But if you say abstract morality requires that you do this, fairness, decency, I used to give them lectures on the desirability of a ceasefire. And they'd say to me, listen, we don't fight to have a ceasefire, we fight to have victory.
So you got to have something to deal with them back.
You have to prove to them that they can't have victory. I mean, if in that situation, and in the present situation, if they want relations with the United States badly enough, they'll let us look for the missing in action. No, it's not a Cold War anymore. We're not looking for military secrets.
Is your testimony done? Did they say anything about bringing you back?
No, I'm finished.
Will the President Nixon testify?
I would be surprised. I really don't think it's a good idea for presidents to testify before congressional committees years after they've been in office. I think it breaks down the separation of powers.
How about in private?
I think if they wanted to have a private discussion of his recollection, that might be appropriate.
Thanks, Doc. Always great seeing you.
Always good to see you.
Dr. Henry Kissinger. We'll be back with Winston Lord and Vernon Walters. More on this topic and your phone calls. Don't go away.
Coming up, two more Nixon insiders share their views.
I take my son to daycare every day, and his security is my primary concern.
Paul Kewen talks about his new Goodyear AquaTread radials.
When I first saw the AquaTread, I thought, okay, I see how the water is going to flow away.
The advanced Deep Groove Aqua Channel channels water away as you drive.
I feel like I've got control in different conditions.
AquaTread, only from Goodyear. Paul Kewen knows, and it's why we say the best tires in the world have Goodyear written all over them.
I feel very confident.
Okay, let's begin. You know how to recognize Federal Express. You may not know how to recognize Konica. There, now you do. What you know about Federal Express, what Federal Express knows about Konica. Why you use Federal Express, why Federal Express uses Konica. So if you know this company, you should know this company. Because Konica delivers for Federal Express. Class dismissed.
Tonight on Sports Tonight, we'll of course be charting all of the Major League Baseball races as things get down to cases there. We'll take a look at some of the further injuries in the NFL, and we'll have a look ahead at the big tennis match between Connors and Martina. That's tonight at 11.
The New Yorker. It's been called the best magazine in the world. Probably the best magazine that ever was. See if you agree. Call this number and get 52 weekly issues of The New Yorker for just $25.95. That's $75 off the cover price. And get this special cartoon collection free with your paid subscription. Call 1-800-257-1257 for 52 weekly issues of the best magazine in the world. Yes, The New Yorker.
Larry King Live continues, followed by World News after this local commercial break. Next on CNN.
Here's an opportunity for you to receive a free bottle of Red Diamond nail polish.
Now you can dry your nail polish diamond hard in 3 minutes or less guaranteed.
Hi, I'm Crystal Gale. Between my career and my children, I don't have time to wait for my nails to dry. That's why I depend on Salon Nail 3. It dries my nails to a hard, shiny finish in just minutes.
Salon Nail is easy as 1, 2, 3. Just apply the Salon Nail base coat. Use your favorite nail polish, then apply the top coat. Finish by holding your nails under the Salon Nail drying light. Best of all, your beautiful finish will last and last without chipping or peeling. The Salon Nail 3 system comes with a generous 20 manicure supply of both the base coat and the top coat, as well as the compact drying unit. You're guaranteed months of Salon Perfect manicures, or you get a full money-back refund.
To order, call toll-free 1-800-257-1257. Use your credit card and receive a free bottle of nail polish or send $29.95 plus $4.50 shipping to the address on your screen.
This is CNN.
Welcome back to Larry King Live. Don't forget, Friday night, a full hour with Governor Mario Cuomo of New York. And next week, General Norman Schwarzkopf will be here. That's next Wednesday night. Washington is buzzing, of course, about angry testimony given today by our first guest, Henry Kissinger, on the fate of POWs left in Vietnam. But his isn't the only opinion on what happened. The possibility seems to exist that American POWs were officially written off by some Nixon officials. It's a question that serves as a source of great anguish for a nation still healing from the wounds of that war. Here to help us with these questions are two former high-level Nixon officials who also testified before that Senate Select Committee. Ambassador Vernon Walters, former Deputy Director of the CIA under Richard Nixon, and Ambassador Winston Lord, who was Special Assistant to National Security Advisor Henry Kissinger. Vernon, we'll start with you. Good seeing you. Thank you both for coming. Mr. Ambassador, what's your overall assessment of these hearings?
Well, I don't know, what good they'll really do. They may give some of the families the sensation that, every effort is being made to uncover traces. But I do not believe that we ever left anybody behind knowingly.
You say give the families the sensation, meaning that it would be a false sensation.
It would be a false sensation that there may be some hope. The kind of people these are, how could they explain prisoners today, 15 to 17 years after the end of the war? How could they justify having kept them this long after signing the treaties, signing the agreements, and long years of peace, and they've still been holding these people? There'd be no explanation.
Also, if they would have kept them, Winston, as Secretary Kissinger pointed out, why not ask for something?
Exactly.
What's the point of holding hostages?
If I could step back just for a moment to get to your original question. First, my heart goes out to the families of the MIAs. They've suffered for 20 years. I hope these hearings will heal some of the wounds and bring some peace to them. Secondly, let's all keep our eye on who the villains are. They're the North Vietnamese. Thirdly, we will not heal the wounds if we entertain monstrous charges that we knowingly left prisoners behind, or that 5 successful administrations, Democratic and Republican, have participated in a conspiracy. So I'd like to get that out there in front.
That would be a tragedy to do that.
Right.
Unless
the families have suffered enough without having that anguish as well.
But what if it did happen? The truth is paramount, isn't it?
The truth is clear on one point, that 5 administrations did not participate in a conspiracy. So let's get that clear. There are several issues here. Was it a good agreement? I think it was the best possible one given the time and the pressures everyone is under. Should we have gone ahead with it despite the discrepancies? We can discuss that. I believe Nixon had a tough choice. He made the correct choice. And then thirdly, have we followed up? Reasonable people disagree with it. It's been vigorous enough, but I feel that a major effort has been made. And in any event, if there's been mistakes with particular statements out of context, it has not been a conspiracy to deceive the families.
Mr. Kissinger said that he had no bargaining power when he had that list of 80 or so. He had nothing to say to them because the Congress had taken all that away. Do you agree?
I agree, and one day Le Duc Tho said to him in my presence, and I translated it, he said, I don't know why I should negotiate anything with you. I spent 6 hours with Senator McGovern yesterday, and your opposition is going to force you to give me what I want. And that was one of Dr. Kissinger's great days. He looked at him and he said, Mr. Le Duc Tho, you know nothing about an opposition. You have always brutally destroyed any opposition which raised its head in your own country. Do not talk about opposition. Leave that to those who tolerate one.
What happened, Vernon, do you think, to those who didn't come back?
They killed them. They either killed them at the time, angry peasants or people in towns who'd been bombarded, or at some point these people did something that displeased them, And I think they killed him. Let me just give you one fact. When I served in Vietnam, I went straight to France. The French had lost something like 23,000 prisoners at Dien Bien Phu who were identified and known to be alive at the time of the surrender. The French got back about 10,000. Less than half. These weren't people lost in the jungle or parachuted out of airplanes. These were people in organized military units which surrendered officially on the battlefield.
That's tough to hear, though, isn't it, Winston? We don't want to hear that.
We don't want to hear it. We may never know exactly what happened. I hope these hearings help shed light on it. I suspect that if there aren't any alive today, I agree with your original point. How could you explain they're holding people and not telling anybody about it? The world would be outraged if they revealed it. If they don't reveal it, what kind of leverage do they get out of it? So we've never had one confirmed, absolute fix on a live POW being held in 20 years. We've got to keep pursuing this. I recognize the anguish. The lists were inadequate at the time of the agreement. They should have been pursued. They were pursued. The story still has to be told. But we also don't want to get undue hopes up for these poor families.
Vernon, if we knew the list was inadequate, why did we go ahead?
Well, I think Wynn explained that very well the other day. He said, if the agreement is imperfect, what do? Go back to military action, which the Congress would probably have stopped. We couldn't. We had no leverage.
Here's the choice the president.
Between a rock and a hard
Well, here's the choice the president had. First of all, we were disappointed in the list, particularly with respect to Laos. They were much shorter than suggestive intelligence said they ought to be turning over to us. We, however, did not have ironclad proof of any one person, let alone several, that we absolutely knew for sure. And Senator Kerry, the chairman of the committee, agreed with that, in fact, volunteered that the day before yesterday. So the president and all of us, suspecting the North Vietnamese were very treacherous anyway, being disappointed in the lists, had a considerable anguish about the discrepancies. On the other hand, we had 591 prisoners we were certainly going to get back, and if we tore up the agreement, we would not get them back. More prisoners would be taken, more Americans and Vietnamese and others would be killed. The Congress would probably not support doing it in any event, and the American society would have been blown apart. So I don't think Nixon had a better choice.
Do you agree with Secretary Kissinger that Nixon should not be called?
I think calling the President of the United States, whoever he is, whether it's Nixon or any other of the living presidents of the United States, I think, to my mind, trespasses on the separation of powers in our society. If they want to talk to them privately or something, yes, but to call the former President of the United States or the current President of the United States before the bar of a Senate committee, sitting down there with them sitting on top of him, I think would be bad.
Yeah, I agree, but I would not only tolerate, I would encourage the President to sit down with the committee in private and try to shed more light on this, to explain his passion on this issue, and to try to reach some reconciliation.
You think President Nixon ought to make that?
In his own self-interest and for the interest of the families and for the nation. Yes.
Well, I'm afraid I'm not going to quite go along with that. It would leak within a matter of hours, and you would have had the result of the President being interrogated by the committee. As for the families, I share that agony. When I was testifying in 1976 before the Congressman Montgomery, he said, I was Deputy Director of C.I.A., he said, are you holding this out to protect some secrecy of sources and methods? And I said under oath, if I could, by raising the veil of secrecy, assuage or lessen the agony and uncertainty of these families, I would do it. I can't. Because as Wynn said, I never, in my time as Deputy Director of CIA, ever saw a piece of intelligence confirmed that indicated that an American prisoner was somewhere in North Vietnam.
Our guests are Ambassador Vernon Walters, the former ambassador to the UN in Germany, Ambassador Winston Lord, the former ambassador to China. Your phone calls will be included right after this. Don't go away.
I have a high probability assessment that people were left behind in Laos, and a medium probability assessment with regard to Vietnam.
It was unreal. You woke up with morning breath. You were meeting Miss Wonderful for breakfast, and instead of minty fresh scope... Where's my scope? There was something from the medicine-y mouthwash. It looked blue, but it still smelled somewhat medicine-y. I need my scope! It's okay. Relax. It was all a dream. You do have scope. It's minty through and through and kills 90% of morning breath bacteria. So you use minty fresh scope and you kiss morning breath goodbye.
Freedent's the one. Only one gum leads the way when you've got dental work, and that's Freedent. Freedent won't stick to your dental work, so you can be confident chewing it. And because it also moistens your mouth and freshens your breath, Freedent's in a class by itself.
Freedent's the
one that took the stick out of gum and freed and moistened your mouth. Yeah, moistened your mouth and freshened your breath while you chew.
Non-stick Freedent moistens your mouth and freshens your breath.
Comfort in a four-wheel drive. Amazing.
I got a big crew and I need a lot of space.
It makes me feel tall.
It's tough but refined, kind of like me.
It's got it all.
Why do more people find themselves in a Ford Explorer than any other vehicle in its class? For as many reasons as there are explorers.
Finders keepers.
Find yourself in an Explorer.
Have you driven a Ford lately?
Would you believe that your brain can heal illness? This medical alternative says that your mind can heal your body. We'll hear from Dr. Deepak Chopra, who says it works. Sonia Live, 1 p.m. Eastern, tomorrow on CNN.
We're going to go to your calls for Ambassadors Vernon Walters and Winston Lord. But first, we just saw the clip of former Secretary of Defense Schlesinger saying that he believes there were people there. Are you saying this is a current belief and not a then belief?
My guess
is he misinterpreted this?
My guess is misinterpreted that it's a current belief.
Or he believes it now but didn't then.
I was his deputy at that time, and he may have seen some things that I didn't, but I don't think there were many, and I do not ever recall seeing any kind of confirmed evidence that someone had seen a live American
I was very
prisoner.
disturbed by the headlines this morning in many papers which suggested that he and Laird said we knowingly left people behind. I heard their testimony. I would not have written a headline that way, and I think it has distorted the debate and heated it up.
Mr. Kissinger said Laird told him that that's not what he meant.
Exactly.
Let's go to your calls for Winston Lord and Vernon Walters, Bradenton, Florida. Hello.
Yes, my name is Patricia O'Grady. I'm the daughter of a known prisoner of war who was captured in Laos. I know exactly who captured my father. I know the exact location where he was held and detained in Laos by a primitive tribal grouping. My question is, when the Laotian people, at the close of the war in 1973, when the Laotian officials specifically claimed to have American prisoners of war and asked the Nixon administration publicly to negotiate directly with them, why, instead of negotiating with the Laotian government and representatives, did the Nixon administration claim that all POWs had been returned and that there were none still alive?
Who wants to take it?
Well, I think the particular Pathet Lao who claimed that they had something like 150 prisoners 3 days later retracted that statement, which I think is very significant. The Vietnamese, the North Vietnamese, had told us that they would take care of the prisoners in Laos, and they were much more organized than the Laotians. The Laotians had a very primitive countryside. The Vietnamese, I'm sure, made the Lao, my belief is, when it was militarily possible, turn over the prisoners to them.
So her father stayed with that primitive family?
I have no way of knowing.
Anything you'd add?
Except to underline my sympathy for the caller and what she's been through and continues to go through. I was not in the negotiations after February 1973, but my understanding is we did talk to the Pathet Lao as well as the North Vietnamese and kept that to this question.
Caller, are you there?
Yes.
Do you remain angry at this government?
I'm angry at the lies that I have been told. I would tell you that all of the POWs in Laos were not turned over. I have U.S. government documents from the Department of Defense that clearly state that the militia, the tribal group that captured my father, refused to turn him over to the 280th Air Regiment Vietnamese.
Well, I can just reiterate my sympathy. I don't know this particular case, and I hope to God that she's getting the right answer.
But she certainly expresses, does she not, Vernon?
She certainly expresses this. And
not knowing.
There's nothing worse than uncertainty. It would be almost better to know that they were dead. It's a dreadful, dreadful situation. There is nothing worse than uncertainty. And I can hardly believe that anybody in the United States government would willingly prolong or continue that agony.
You're saying, both of you saying, the blame belongs there, not here.
Absolutely.
Right. Powell, Ohio. Hello.
Yes. My name's Mitch Guess, and my father's been missing since 1968 in Laos. And they don't understand the anguish that the family members do go through. We are on a constant roller coaster every single day with the information that's been in the papers and everything lately. The biggest problem I feel is that there isn't a single person that's in politics that has a family member missing, and we feel that if they did have somebody missing in the family, maybe this wouldn't be such a big issue.
Ma'am, what's the roller coaster means there's an up. What's an up? For example, what occurs that causes you to boost your feelings?
Excuse me?
What occurs that makes you boost your feelings?
What occurs, the pictures and the photos that you were talking about?
Yeah, but as Secretary Kissinger pointed out, they were all proved to be frauds.
Well, they're proven to be frauds, but there's still over 1,000 live sightings that they have been, you know, in the past year that they're still checking into that aren't going on in Vietnam.
So do you believe your government wouldn't want to get your father back?
I'm not saying they wouldn't want to get it back, but I have a feeling that there is an issue there that nobody wants to surface for some reason. And if they would just not sweep it under the rug, if they would surface this issue, get out whatever the truth may be, then I think that the issue could be solved.
Then believe me, I can't pretend to understand your anguish. I try to. I hope it can be eased somewhat by distinguishing between being critical of whether public statements or information has been imperfect, and it may well have been in your case and in other cases, and distinguishing that from whether American officials genuinely want to try to resolve this issue, whether they're covering something up. And I hope your pain is not doubled by thinking the latter, conspiracy theater, because it just makes it worse.
Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania. Hello.
To Mr. Walters, with regards to what he said with the history of the North Vietnamese not holding prisoners, I believe, if I read history right, the French had kept prisoners of war for over 20 years. In 1974. They had released them. If I'm correct, if Mr. Walters is aware of that, then why are they acting like that? They didn't know.
I mean, they released French prisoners?
He has no knowledge or data. They remember a man by the name of Mr. Garwood that came back.
Mr. Garwood stayed there voluntarily for quite a long time.
My point.
He wasn't French anyway. But with regard to the French, the Franco-Vietnamese agreement ending the war in Vietnam required the return of all prisoners, except that the Vietnamese never gave them a list either.
So there could be French people calling their shows tonight saying,
well,
where are our
I didn't get any list, or they got an insufficient list?
They got no list, I don't believe.
So we at least got a list, but it's not sufficient.
Just to give you an example of this, the Vietnamese knew that the prisoners were one of the biggest leverages they had on us. They knew that probably our number one objective was to end the war honorably, and our number two was to get the prisoners back. And therefore, they used this trump card for all it was worth. And in my mind, they led us deliberately to believe that they were holding people that they were not, in the hope that this would increase their leverage on us and bring the war to an end. The blame is in North Vietnam, not in the U.S. government.
Back with more calls on Larry King Live. Don't forget Norman Schwarzkopf a week from tomorrow, and Governor Mario Cuomo for a full hour Friday night. Don't go away.
Can anyone seriously believe that any honorable public official would neglect America's servicemen, and especially those who suffered so much for their country? Or, even worse, arrange for a conspiracy to obscure the fate of the prisoners left behind?
Hello, I'm Susan Rook. At the top of the hour, the UN is poised to vote Yugoslavia out of the General Assembly. Better than expected news for the home building industry, and another victory for proponents of cable TV regulation. Those stories and lots more on World News right after Larry King.
The world is in transition. The defining challenge of the 90s is to win the economic competition, to win the peace. We must be a military superpower, an economic superpower, and an export superpower. In this election, you'll hear two versions of how to do this. Theirs is to look inward. Ours is to look forward. Prepare our people to compete, to save and invest so we can win. Here's what I'm fighting for. Open markets for American products, lower government spending, tax relief, opportunities for small business, legal and health reform, job training, and new schools built on competition ready for the 21st century.
The copier is the heart of the business.
They come in and take care of it before it goes down.
They don't desert you once the copier is in.
Buyer's Laboratory agrees. The Pitney Bowes 9070 consistently displayed impressive performance. Their value-added maintenance system clearly increases uptime. To learn more, call 1-800-MR. Bowes for a copy of BLI's report or ask our customers.
Pitney Bowes made promises that were kept.
Ever try Plax before you brush?
Rinsing with Plaques helps loosen plaque and break it up. And when you break up plaque first, then brush, you brush off more. Break up the plaque with Plaques.
Most eye doctors agree dry, irritated eyes should be treated. And doctors agree dry, irritated eyes can be effectively treated with soothing, cooling Visine Extra. Visine gets the red out.
Welcome back to Larry King Live with Ambassadors Vernon Walters and Winston Lord, and we go to Riverside, California. Hello.
Hi, this question's for either of your two guests. My daughter is the goddaughter of Colonel Fred Cherry, who thankfully came back after 7.5 years in Vietnam. My question concerns the lack of continuity. If there was this tremendous belief in the government that these people were still alive there, then neither Colonel Cherry nor any of the other POWs that I have met through him can understand why during the Carter administration there was absolutely no attention paid to this subject at all. Jimmy Carter refused to acknowledge the question, did not deal with it.
Neither of these gentlemen served in the Carter administration.
I didn't serve, and I happen to be a Republican, but I don't know the details of the Carter administration. I do know that he sent Ambassador Woodcock over there very shortly after he was inaugurated to look into this question. Now, whether they had a sustained effort, I'm not prepared to judge, but I remember that mission. And by the way, Ambassador Woodcock came back and said almost verbatim what a Pentagon official has been quoted disapprovingly as saying, namely, there's no clear evidence that people are alive. Now, maybe it's a badly phrased statement, but it's been made by several administrations.
Do you think the Carter administration tried to?
I don't really know. I was out of the country during most of the Carter administration, but I would just say one thing. I myself served on the battlefields of World War II, the Greek Civil War, Korea, and Vietnam. And the idea that anybody with the kind of background that I have, and many high government officials did, would willingly hide what had happened to their comrades is really beyond my capacity to understand. But I do understand the agony of the family because the uncertainty is almost worse than the confirmed report of death.
Dallas, hello.
But let me add also, President Carter is a compassionate man, and I can't imagine he wasn't concerned about this issue.
Dallas, go ahead.
Yeah, this is Dallas. I'm calling. I'm a 23-year-old veteran. I was in Vietnam in '69. Do those gentlemen there, are they aware that if I was in formation and my wingman got shot down, we had a pact that if he got shot down, I saw a shoot. Because if I didn't see a shoot, my wife would get $10,000, which would be my death benefit. If I saw a shoot, his wife would get his pay forever. The kids, I have 4 children. You think I want to go down to Vietnam and have my wife left with $10,000 when I can get her to receive my pay for the next 20 years my children grow up?
So you say your buddy reports you dead?
He's there. When why don't they get realistic about it? You saw shoots, okay? These people are dead. Like that woman called and my father's dead. That could be my daughter calling in 20 years from now, thinking that I'm an MIA. Would you rather have had the money all these years and had a good life, or would you rather be starving? People.
Never thought of that. You gentlemen never?
I haven't. It's a very, very tough dilemma. I wouldn't like to be put in the position of having to decide under those.
Is that what we do? They pay you for life?
I'm not familiar. I'm not absolutely sure of that.
Do they? You paid for life?
I don't know the details.
We're going to break and come back with our remaining moments with Winston Lord and Vernon Walters on Larry King Live. The topic that won't go away, don't go away.
Hello, everyone. I'm Karen McGinnis at the CNN Center in Atlanta. Larry King Live will continue with his guest coming up in just a few minutes. The first full day of fall on Wednesday produces some fairly warm temperatures across the West. Even portions of Montana may see readings in the 90s. Denver at 88, Medford, Oregon 79, and for Boise 85. Los Angeles 92 and variable clouds. But 50s and 60s slip all the way down through the Ohio Valley. 80s are squeezed down to the Florida Peninsula. Chicago 65, New York 68. For Alaska, Hawaii, and the Caribbean, it shapes up like this. Colder than normal for much of Alaska. Fairbanks clear, colder 29. The overnight lows 5 to 10 degrees. Now these forecasts coming up for Wednesday.
Hello?
Jean,
I thought you were getting out.
Oh, hi, Ellen. Well, the doctor said more tests.
I thought he said you were fine.
Well, I guess they just want to be sure.
So, when are the tests?
Well, he said they can't schedule anything right now. So he said as long as I'm here, I might have to stay until Tuesday.
Oh.
Maybe Wednesday.
Oh. How's the food?
No one has to tell you that doing business today is more challenging than ever. But all over the world, one company is helping you meet those challenges head on, no matter what it takes. New challenges, new thinking. Think of all the songs yet to be sung. All the games yet to be played. All the ideas yet to be imagined. Think of all the hopes and dreams and promise yet to be realized. Of all the arguments against abortion, these are the most compelling. Life, what a beautiful choice.
It's about 90s style. Your health. Travel. Good food. It's about showbiz. I'm Christy Brinkley. Join me for Living in the 90s. Weekdays, 10:30 Eastern on CNN.
For a transcript of Larry King Live, send $5 to Larry King Live Transcripts, Journal Graphics Incorporated, 1535 Grant Street, Denver, Colorado, 80203. Or call 303-831-9000.
Hempstead, North Carolina, hello.
Hello?
Yes, go ahead.
Yes, actually, this is Quincy, Mass.
All right, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
What I'd like to see come out of the Senate hearings is an absolute unanimous vote in the Congress and the Senate to let Vietnam know that the people still remember exactly what they've done. They've lied, they've been treacherous, and they've kept either, secrets, either alive Americans or dead Americans behind our back, and not be nice to these people at all. Let them know that...
of the Congress,
I
what do you
think
think?
it's a very constructive suggestion. I hope it's done.
I'm 100% for it.
Okay, this is Hempstead, North Carolina, and both gentlemen agree with that caller. Good question. Hello.
Yes, sir. If these gentlemen want to end the agony of the family, why don't they just simply declassify the files? The families cannot read their files. They have pages that are totally blacked out except for the A's and the
Why
O's.
is that?
Well, the only thing I can think of is that some of them may involve agents that we had in Vietnam or in Laos.
And they wouldn't be there now either.
Well, they might easily be there if they were locals. They might easily be there if they were locals.
Why don't we declassify, because we don't have the authority to do that. My understanding is an awful lot of files are being declassified. To the extent that we can, we should do it.
I would declassify everything that did not put someone's life in danger.
And the people have a right to see their
That's right.
Absolutely.
Thank you both very much. Winston Lord and Vernon Walters, we thank them both, and Henry Kissinger. We'll be with you in 1 hour, the Larry King Show on Mutual Radio with Carl Sagan tonight, and then back again tomorrow evening from New York. Meanwhile, standing by in Atlanta is Susan Rook. She goes it alone tonight. Dauntless into the night. What's up, Susan?
Larry, thank you much. Next, tonight, President Bush vetoed the family leave bill approved by Congress. We'll see what might come next. Also, a major ruling in the battle over abortion, and it could still become a three-major candidate race for the White House. We'll explain. World News right after this.
Coming up, World News, followed by Sports Tonight, after a word from your local cable system, here on CNN.
Are you ready to finally get in shape? To lose weight aerobically? To tone and strengthen stomach, thighs, and buttocks? Thinking about getting in shape is the first step. The next step is easy. Fitness Effects presents Easy Step. Experts agree stair climbing provides a superior aerobic workout. Now you can enjoy the benefits of stair climbing in the comfort of your own home. And it's so easy. If you can walk, you can easy step. Just step on the slip-resistant foot plates and step, step, step to a fitter, trimmer you. Just 20 minutes 3 times a week and you'll burn maximum calories in minimum time. Step by step, you firm and shape buttocks, thighs, and calves. Most expensive stair climbers only work muscles from the waist down. Easy Step's unique free step-in system adds an upper body workout to strengthen and tone all major muscle groups. Easy Step helps improve coordination and balance while providing an excellent cardiovascular workout. There's no assembly required. You set the pace and achieve your personal goals as you step away stress and calories. The hydraulic resistance system gently cushions each step while providing just the right amount of resistance. Easy Step folds down to an incredible 4 inches to conveniently slip out of sight. And it's so portable and compact, you can Easy Step anytime, anywhere. With all steel construction, Easy Step is engineered to last and comes complete with an amazing 5-year warranty. Best of all, unlike this $1,000 monster, Easy Step can be yours for 3 easy payments of $33. Exclusively available from Fitness Effects. So take the Easy Step to a younger, firmer-looking you and order now.
Don't send any money. Just call 1-800-257-1257. We'll bill your credit card 3 monthly payments of only $33 plus shipping and handling. To order your Easy Step, call 1-800-257-1257. That's 1-800-257-1257. Just 3 monthly payments and your satisfaction is guaranteed with our convenient payment plan. Call now, 1-800-257-1257.
This is CNN.
The United Nations is on the verge of slapping Yugoslavia with a stiff penalty. And Henry Kissinger reacts bitterly and emotionally to accusations the U.S. knowingly left Americans in Southeast Asia.
This is CNN's World News. What you need to know, what you want to know, with Susan Rook and Patrick Greenlaw.
Thank you for joining us. Patrick Greenlaw is off tonight. The United Nations is in the process of deciding the diplomatic fate of the former Yugoslavia. CNN's Charles Feldman is at the United Nations with details. Charles?
In fact, that fate has now been decided by a vote of 127 yes, 6 noes, and 26 abstentions. What is now called rump Yugoslavia, that's what remains of the old Yugoslavia, Serbia and Montenegro, has been in effect expelled from the General Assembly, no longer allowed to participate. And if they want to again, they're going to have to reapply to this world body. And then if they do that, they face the very real possibility of a veto by the United Nations Security Council, which only a few days ago voted its own resolution calling on the General Assembly to do exactly what it did just minutes ago, and that is to, in effect, ban the participation of rump Yugoslavia in the activities of the General Assembly. At the end of the vote, the representative from Yugoslavia walked out of the General Assembly, leaving his chair vacant. In terms of people speaking, there are a number of countries that elected to talk prior to the vote to explain why they either were or were not going to vote in favor of this measure. Britain was one of the co-sponsors of the resolution. Great Britain, among those people that spoke, they said that this wasn't a punitive measure. The British ambassador to the United Nations said rather that this was forced upon the world body because rump Yugoslavia was in effect trying to take over the old seat of Yugoslavia automatically, and that was something that the world community would not be able to abide by. Before the vote expelling it from the General Assembly, the Prime Minister of Yugoslavia had his last chance to address the Assembly.
Hold me and my government responsible and accountable for the policies and actions of Yugoslavia, but give us the help and international recognition we need in pursuing our program of peace. Mr. President, I herewith formally request membership in the United Nations on behalf of the new Yugoslavia, whose government I represent. I'm sure my country and my government satisfy the condition for membership, at least as well as the countries and governments many of you here today represent.
So Susan, it is all over as far as the UN is concerned. It took about an hour or so of speeches and then the final vote. And recapping that, 127 yes, 6 noes, 26 abstentions. The rump Yugoslavia, Serbia, and Montenegro no longer allowed to participate in the activities of the General Assembly. Susan?
Charles, one more matter. The U.S. is asking for an investigation into war crimes. How is that going?
Yes, that's something that happened late in the day. There was a resolution that was passed earlier, a few weeks back, calling upon countries to collect this data, and my colleague, CNN's Ralph Begleiter, has more details on this.
Circuit decision was not a surprise to me in light of the recent Supreme Court case and the recent Supreme Court decision in the Pennsylvania case.
The women of Louisiana and the families of Louisiana are now safe from criminal bans on abortion, but only temporarily. America remains just one Supreme Court justice away from a Supreme Court that would uphold criminal bans like Louisiana's and eliminate the fundamental freedom to choose for all American women.
We apologize. That was obviously the wrong piece. We will take a break and regroup. Our coverage continues right after this.
World News is brought to you by Lens Crafters. Better fit for greater comfort in about an hour.
My glasses drive me crazy. They're always slipping at the wrong time. They never stay where I put them.
You don't have to put up with glasses that don't fit anymore, because at Lens Crafters we have so many ways to fit your snug points. With features like snug fit hinges that flex to keep their lasting fit. And your glasses will be ready in about an hour. How's that?
Real secure. Finally, comfortable glasses that keep their fit.
Lens Crafters will match any competitor's price.
The world is in transition. The defining challenge of the 90s is to win the economic competition, to win the peace. We must be a military superpower, an economic superpower, and an export superpower. In this election, you'll hear two versions of how to do this. Theirs is to look inward. Ours is to look forward. Prepare our people to compete, to save and invest so we can win. Here's what I'm fighting for. Open markets for American products, lower government spending, tax relief, opportunities for small business, legal and health reform, job training, and new schools built on competition ready for the 21st century.
Mom, tell the truth. Is everything all right? Is this where we reverse roles? Be serious. I mean, you won't have to sell the house or anything, will you? Well, why would I do that? Mom.
Look, when you were away at school, Dad met with Greg Hall down at Payne Weber.
No, that was 10 years ago.
They set up this annuity just in case anything happened.
So you have enough?
More than enough every month.
How'd the Payne Weber guy know back then what Daddy wanted for you?
You asked.
President Bush vetoed the family leave bill tonight while on a campaign swing through the South. The bill would have required businesses with more than 50 employees to give workers up to 6 weeks a year of unpaid leave for the birth of a child or illness in the immediate family. In vetoing the bill, the president said, quote, "I have always supported employer policies to give time off and believe it important that employers offer those benefits. I object, however, to the federal government mandating leave policies for America's employers and workforce." Congress is expected to try to override the veto before adjourning in October. The Bush administration, meanwhile, has proposed a voluntary emergency leave plan with tax credits for employers. The Louisiana law that banned most abortions was thrown out today as unconstitutional. A federal appeals court in Baton Rouge overturned the law, citing a Supreme Court ruling earlier this year. The High Court saying in a Pennsylvania case that states could not place unreasonable burdens on women who want an abortion. The Louisiana law would have allowed abortions only when a mother's life was in danger or in cases of rape or incest. And doctors who performed illegal abortions could have gone to jail. For some, today's ruling was small comfort. For others, it was expected.
The decision was not a surprise to me in light of the recent Supreme Court case and the recent Supreme Court decision in the Pennsylvania case.
The women of Louisiana and the families of Louisiana are now safe from criminal bans on abortion, but only temporarily. America remains just one Supreme Court justice away from a Supreme Court that would uphold criminal bans like Louisiana's and eliminate the fundamental freedom to choose for all American women.
The Louisiana abortion law thrown out today was passed last year. It was never enforced because of that legal challenge. Did the U.S. government knowingly leave behind missing servicemen as the Vietnam War came to a close? Testifying on Capitol Hill, former Secretary of State Henry Kissinger angrily said no. Others, though, are not so sure. More from CNN's Wolf Blitzer.
You swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
Testifying under oath, former Secretary of State Henry Kissinger denied the Nixon administration knowingly abandoned American prisoners in Southeast Asia.
That allegation is a flat-out lie.
He rejected former Defense Secretary James Schlesinger's assertion that American pilots were left behind after the 1973 Paris Peace Accords.
I do not believe he can find one memorandum, one phone conversation, one meeting, or one anything in which he expressed at the time the views he expressed yesterday.
But Kissinger's main target was the Senate panel itself.
What has happened to this country that a congressional committee could be asked to inquire whether any American official of whatever administration would fail to move heaven and earth to fight for the release of American POWs and for an accounting of the missing.
Committee Chairman John Kerry cited documents suggesting Kissinger's devotion to finding prisoners was secondary to other issues.
We were willing to move heaven and earth to enforce the bombing on the violations for infiltration. But we never talked about moving heaven and earth to have that full accounting.
Kissinger's most heated exchanges occurred with Kerry, himself a Vietnam veteran who returned home an outspoken peace activist.
It is a really bizarre situation when the people who were parading and keeping us from doing the things we needed to do are now telling us what sentences we should have used after all our leverage was taken away from us.
Family members of missing Americans say they were not satisfied by Kissinger's testimony.
It's time to cut through all this doublespeak that we keep hearing time and again and again. The testimony you heard is that they left him in 1973. The evidence is that they are still there, still alive today.
The committee hopes to release its final report before the end of this year. Before then, they still want to hear from the man at the center of this controversy, Richard Nixon. But committee sources say it's still unclear whether he will agree to testify. Wolf Blitzer, CNN, Capitol Hill.
Congress has set the stage for a showdown with the White House over cable TV legislation. President Bush now has the bill proposing to regulate the cable industry, and he is expected to veto it. But as CNN's Candy Crowley tells us, Congress is ready to respond.
Approved in the Senate by a rock-solid and veto-proof 74-25, the cable TV bill is on a collision course, heading up Pennsylvania Avenue to the White House, where the president will veto it and Democrats will make the most of it.
It is sad to see the president turn a deaf ear to the legitimate concerns and interests of American consumers and to cave in to the unregulated cable monopolists.
Supporters of the bill say the measure will control price hikes, promote better service, and increase competition. Major provisions include federal regulation of the cost of basic cable service in areas where there is no competition, a prohibition effective in 10 years, ending requirements that viewers purchase various cable packages before they can buy premium channels, and standards designed to make cable systems more compatible with TV sets and VCRs. The bill also gives commercial broadcasters the right to be paid when a cable operator carries their local station. Opponents argue the bill is a costly regulatory nightmare that will in fact raise prices and strangle everything that's been innovative about cable TV.
Now, the proponents of this conference report propose to take bureaucratic red tape, wrap it around and around the cable industry to the point that new jobs, programming creation, and technological innovation stop in its tracks.
And even some opponents agree something should be done about cable costs and services, just not this something.
But that something shouldn't be a measure that will cut off the development of the programming information that consumers really want. Shouldn't be a regulatory scheme which will entrench and perpetuate the existing cable monopolies. And above all, shouldn't be something that in the end will leave consumers paying more for less, still captive to a regulated monopoly provider.
As of now, there are enough votes in Congress on this cable bill to override for the first time the president's veto. And many Democrats believe they can turn that legislative defeat into a political one. Just 6 weeks short of the election, the president will be forced to explain why he vetoed a bill even many Republicans believe is pro-consumer. Candy Crowley, CNN, Capitol Hill.
And speaking of politics, President Bush today attacked Bill Clinton on his record as Arkansas governor. Bush made a 4-way